Hello! Hi everybody, welcome. We are going to do something a little special today. Welcome to a brand new video from Danotage. Hello. It's special, it's interesting, it's nothing crazy. We're going to be doing a tier list. We're going to be doing a tier list of the house locations, pretty much all the locations, but for specifically buying a house in New World on Aeternum. This was a sub goal that we hit on our Twitch channel just last couple months ago, month ago. It's about the time when the game released, and I've been meaning to do this now that we've had a whole bunch of time in the game, and people have been able to buy maybe a couple houses, maybe all 3 houses, and just sort of see where people are feeling. But I wanted to give my opinion based on what I thought was a couple of criteria we're gonna be ranking this on. So location, for, you know, travel purposes, where are you going to travel mostly, and then what's a good location to then be able to recall to and then travel wherever you want. 2, utility, so which places are most likely to get upgraded, which places are most likely to honestly not lose, where companies are going to spend their resources in protecting and stuff like that. But also where sort of the central hubs are for, and that's kind of a hint, for trading and whatnot. But some might surprise you, we'll see. And then 3, beauty, and the way it looks. Quite frankly, there will probably be some choices that might surprise you based on that piece of criteria, and that may be where we differ our opinions. But I think there's a lot of informational stuff that'll come from this video, and there's a lot of just fun things. This will be a lot more fun of a video than we've done in the past. So I hope you enjoy, and let's dive right in. So as always, make sure you guys give us a like. That way you help the algorithm and keep us going right here on YouTube. So thanks for watching, and hope you like it. So we're gonna start probably from the bottom. We're gonna probably start from the bottom of the map. So the bottom of the map, and then we're going to go up, which is basically kind of the starting zones and going up, although you can start from different locations on the edges. But we're going to start with First Light. First Light's a very interesting territory for me, because if any of you watched the Battle of New World with me and a bunch of other streamers competing to do all kinds of things, First Light was the only territory we were able to hang on to for such a long time, and that had to do with, you know, all sorts of different reasons. But First Light was a thing that it leaves both a good taste in my mouth and a bad taste in my mouth. As we've been playing, it's been kind of run by this company that's sort of kept things pretty greedy. So that's like, you know, again, a lot of anecdotal stuff. But I'm going to talk about them on a purely basic level. So, location. I think it's interesting. It is central, but it's at the bottom of the map. So you have to think about whether or not you want that central location, or based on whatever it is you're doing, I think there's certain reasons to buy a house here. So I bought my house here in the beta for the Battle of New World. It was our location. It was nice. It's also very, you're on a beach basically. If you've never seen it, it's very much a beach-like place, and I don't know. It's not my cup of tea for beauty. It's not my cup of tea for location-wise either, because there's not a whole lot that you can just go here for and then see a bunch of stuff that you can collect and put together. Granted, there's a lot of stone in First Light. First Light has probably one of the easiest places to just go out and get stone, although you can get stone basically anywhere in the map, anywhere on Aeternum. So First Light is gonna probably get something low. I'm probably gonna stick First Light into, it's not the worst, but it's not great. So I'm going to put it in the C, and I'm going to give it a C tier. Next, we're going to run into Cutlass Keys. Now, Cutlass Keys is extremely interesting to me. Cutlass Keys is the aesthetic that I love the most in this entire game. So, as you may see me running around a lot more now, I will probably have my Robin Hood outfit on. As you see from a lot of our branding, we're very sort of we're in that realm of Robin Hood's era and sort of the um the type of town that feels like he was like he's in Nottingham, right? It's very Nottingham like. As you saw, I was probably searching for that word for a while. It's very Nottingham like. I think Cutlass Keys is a very beautiful location. I love Cutlass Keys to death, and just the way it looks. It's nothing fancy. It's actually not even super high scale, but it feels like a nice place to kind of chill in, and it feels very relaxed. So I would probably buy. Actually, I have already. I bought like a cheaper house. I think as a tier 2, because there's 4 tiers, right? I bought a tier 2, which was the cheapest one that I'm probably going to buy. Because, I mean, tier 3 I already have, and tier 2 I don't have, or tier 4, sorry. Tier 4 I already have. Tier 3 I don't have yet, but I have an idea of where I want to buy. That one's going to be a little bit tougher. But tier 2, my lowest tier, but also the place I definitely want to buy a house in, is Cutlass Keys. So, a couple of reasons for that, other than its beauty, too. So if you look at the location on the map, it's actually this edge of right next to Windward and Monarch's Bluffs, and actually a part of First Light. And if you look at the part of First Light that it's part of, and maybe you've done a lot of early leveling here or early mining here, there's a lot of valuable resources right at the edge of First Light, inside of First Light, mind you, but the closest settlement to that area is the Cutlass Keys settlement. So right then and there, it's a location that touches all those points. I think tactically it's a great location. I think it's there's something I'm probably not going to mention in every territory, but it is one of the hardest places to gain influence in when you're doing PvP, because the PvP quests are actually in the bottom left-hand corner of the territory, where the settlement's in the top right-hand corner, which again makes it very tactical and very, very nice to hold on to. It's one of the first territories that I wanted to take over and be able to keep. It's very, very cool. So honestly, with all of that, I have to give Cutlass Keys an S tier. I think it's just perfect and everything it needs. Now, you could talk about how fancy it's not, and we'll get into another territory later that's very similar, but and a lot more fancy. But at the same time, I think it's very, very nice, and it's perfect for everything it is. I think there are some things that take a lot of value here, that makes up for it not being as big of a settlement, and honestly is wanted as a settlement by a lot of people. Now, that may be different for a lot of you as you watch, but I truly love Cutlass Keys. It is my favorite territory. So, next, Monarch's Bluffs. Monarch's Bluffs is this weird territory that a lot of companies seem to want to go after, probably because of how central it is. Even if it is over to the west side of the island, it is still pretty central, but I hate it. With that being said, that's not necessarily going to fully affect, like it's not automatically going to get a D. I'm not going to give it a D right away. I'm not even going to give it a D probably in total. But Monarch's Bluffs bothers me. I think there are very little resources to gather right around the settlement. There is some gold, there is some silver, there's a little bit of hemp. Like, there's not much. The only thing I think it really has going for it is there's a ton of trees to level to 50. If you're trying to get from logging level 0 or level 1 to level 50, Monarch's Bluffs is not a bad place to do it. The location of everything is okay. It's a little easy to hold on to based on the PvP quests are kind of far. They're not quite as far as Cutlass Keys, but they're far. They're far enough to be somewhat annoying for the attackers to kind of go after. But there's almost nothing I like about Monarch's Bluffs. I mean, it's frankly one of the worst locations for things to go, like for you to just kind of do anything in. But I know people like it, so I've been trying to figure out why, and I think it's just because it's harder to hold, or it's easier to hold on to. With that being said, I know I said I wasn't going to give it a D, but as I talk about it more, there's no, in my opinion, there's nothing special about it. In fact, the only thing that's really cool is the little cut through the middle. I can't really stand it. I think I got to give Monarch's Bluffs a big D, big fat D. I can't stand that territory. And I've had it in, our company had it in the territory, or the open beta, and then it was the first or second territory that our faction owned when the game launched, and we had it for a long time until we finally gave it up. Next, Windward. Windward is special. Windward's gonna be very hard to place in a proper location on this tier list. So, Windward is the dead center. Well, one of the dead center, because I don't think there's a territory that's exactly dead center, but I think if you look at everything, it's actually not even quite dead center, but it's dead center, especially for if you look at everybody's levels versus, so new players and veteran players that have been playing for a while. So basically levels 1 to 60. It's right in the center of that, kind of. Windward is also this sort of it's got a river flowing through it. It's kind of it's pretty to look at. It has so much going on in the first like 30 levels of your main quest line. Windward, I have to think about, I have to not have my bias play into this, because you spend so much time in Windward. You spend so much time near the settlement in Windward that it kind of gets a little weird. The one thing it does have is, one, it's got a ton of trees to chop down for wood. It has the first expedition you go to that pretty much you go to a lot, and there's a lot of people that tried grinding that out. It's right next to Barkamedes, which is pretty cool. It's very easy to get to from there. There's a lot of good things to say about Windward. Windward is very much, I think the devs knew that was going to be a territory that was visited a lot. They put it in there on purpose. As far as utility goes, it's pretty good for trading. I think because of a central location. I think there's another one that's better, but it still does really well. I have a hard time saying I don't like it, because I think I'm just maybe bored of it. I think I've been there so many times throughout closed beta and previews and closed behind closed doors, and I've hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours just spent in Windward alone. So putting that bias aside and looking at the utility based on trading and based on the amount of stuff that's around, getting iron is very difficult around there. There are some areas, but there's not really much. There's a ton of hemp in Windward, so that helps a lot too. Would I buy a house here? I think purely for the purposes of it being a central location would be like the main reason. So with that being said, I think it's a very important territory to hold on to, but we're talking about where we're buying our houses. I think it does play a really big part for it to be central. So I think, as much as I want to give this a B because of how bored I am of Windward, I think we have to give it an A. It is a very important territory, so it is nice to be able to buy a house there. I would say that once people start figuring out that they have to work with other factions to defend against invasions and stuff like that, maybe some people have on certain servers, they haven't on ours. They're very much against helping each other. But once they figure that out, I think people will band together for Windward quite often, because it is something you want to hold on to, and it's probably going to, depending on the company that runs it, it's probably going to be one of the territories that gets the most upgrades. So it's going to be the best place to craft for a very long time. It's going to be the best place to trade for a very long time. It's very powerful. I'm just kind of bored of it, and there's nothing really special going on there, so I give it an A instead of an S. Okay, as we move up the map and go north and find the beauty, and we find other cool stuff, we go to Reekwater. So, Reekwater is a place that a lot of people will probably tell you is super ugly. It's the same thing when we get to Weaver's Fen. These are gonna be very similar rankings, I think. Reekwater it's not pretty. It's not very good looking. It's very dark. It's very grim. It's very swampy. I think Reekwater as a whole is it's something you see late game, and when you're not really expecting that dark swampiness to be in such a late game area, because I mean, it just feels weird, especially with how much corruption goes on there. It's almost like, honestly, it's almost as much corruption as some of the upper levels, like up by a Shattered Mountain, stuff like that. But Reekwater has a lot to provide. Resource-wise, not a ton, but I think it's a good location to get to some of the eastern locations. So basically, if you want to buy a house here and have a fast travel over there, and then be able to go up and down, like say maybe you don't purchase in Windward, maybe you don't purchase in, Everfall or something like that. This is still a good location to buy in. And because I'm not like, the one thing you have to realize too is not a whole lot of people are going to necessarily buy in Reekwater, which does usually mean that the taxes are pretty low. I mean, it goes you move anywhere where a lot of people live, the prices of everything is going to go up, right? Well, if not a whole lot of people live in a place like Reekwater, the taxes may never be super high. So it may be very affordable to live there, and then you can spend a few amount of coins to upkeep your fast travel, and then use that, and then fast travel to a couple of different locations based on your Azoth. There are some precious metals in Reekwater that are nice to find. There's probably I think there's a lot of herbs to find there too. So Reekwater, as much as people hate it, I think that I am going to give it a slightly better grade than it probably deserves. But I think, especially if you're in the Halloween feel or Halloween season, we're recording this the day after Halloween, but I think if you're in that feel and you like that, Reekwater's a pretty cool place. I give Reekwater probably a solid B. Now, on to probably the most important location of the entire game, Everfall. As I said, most likely one of the most important locations in the entire game. I think it is very important. I made a video before about buying my first house and it being in Everfall. And the one thing that I kind of have to wrestle with is it's not super pretty. It's I think the best part about it is it's full of life. So there's a bunch of stuff going on there. It feels especially as it upgrades, it feels like a town that has just so much going on and whatnot. Every part of town has something. So as you enter in from the south, you have where I bought my first house on the right, but you have a couple of stations on the left. I think you have the loom, and you have the tanner, and then you have the kitchen, and then around the corner as you go towards the middle, there's the Arcanum, and then right next to the well, and then right next to the trading post, and then right next to the storage. I kind of wish the storages were a little bit different, but I get with only having 2 storages in a settlement where they are. And then you go up to the church. Like it's a pretty well laid out location, even if it isn't like the prettiest to look at. It feels very basic and homey for a lot of people. It's like the suburbs, honestly. Actually, I would say in this case it's probably like the city actually, because it's where everything is happening. So the coolest thing about Everfall is there's always people there. It is the very center location. It's probably where you'll get the best prices on buying stuff at the trading post, because everybody's going to be competing. There's going to be a lot of competition for sales, and which means that if you want to buy something, you could do it in Everfall. If you want to sell something, your likelihood of selling it is definitely going to be in Everfall, but you're going to have to probably put your price pretty low. So that is the one downfall. Again, more than likely, everything's going to be upgraded there. But at the same time, the house taxes are probably going to be pretty high. On our server, my server that I'm playing on, our taxes here they're average, and based on the fact that there are some pretty cheap areas to live in, that's pretty average. It's decently high. It's one thing that I think you have to spend some time getting your standing up to buy like the tier 4 house, and it took me a while because there's not a whole lot around to do a bunch. And you sort of, it's since the settlement is so central located as well, there are quests in every location. So if you want to go do some town board quests or some faction quests, or even the story quests, or the side quests, I should say, they're kind of all over the place. So it's very central. That makes it convenient for certain reasons, but it also doesn't make it super tactical. I think the reason that people, and it's made this way on purpose, I'm sure, but the reason that it's so kept is not because it's easy to be defended. It's because it is lucrative. It's probably the most lucrative territory in the entire game. So with that being said, while it is expensive, I think it's very nice to have. Getting stuff here is tough. So like if you fast travel here to start gathering goods and whatnot, you're gonna be on a little bit of an uphill battle. But that's what makes it buying a house here good, is because you can kind of go to other locations to farm and then fast travel with a full backpack full of gear and not have to pay anything because, well, you're fast traveling for free to your house. You will pay for that in the long run, obviously, with your taxes, but I think it works. I think it's very well. I think there's no other choice but to give this an S, because simply based on they're right in the middle of everything. It's Windward, but better as far as location goes. So, now on to Ebonscale Reach. Ebonscale Reach. A territory that everybody talks about. It is absolutely the talk of New World. Ebonscale Reach is what I would say the majority of players consider the prettiest location in the game. And I can't really dock it for that. I can't say anything against that. It is extremely pretty. It's not necessarily my style of place where I would want to live, but it's cool. I think the big thing that draws me away from it is because it's so sought out and because how many people like living there, the taxes are always very high. And because it doesn't have a ton of utility for being a central hub for anything, it doesn't reach the I don't think I'm gonna give it an S tier. I don't think it's an S tier location. I think based on its beauty alone, I could not give it an S tier. But it is very pretty, and it is still very close to some of the top locations near the north, or the ones that you cannot take over, which is good for endgame. It has high level mobs. It's got a good amount of things to carve for skinning and tracking. So if you wanted to go into that location, it's very good for that. It also has a lot of cool expeditions and places to quest. I think spending time in Ebonscale Reach is a good time, almost no matter what. If you wanted to find some materials, there's kind of a little bit of everything there. So it does sort of help. There's also a few herbs that are placed there that are very valuable as well. In the end, I would spend time here and do a bunch of things, but I would probably leave it and not really buy a house. With that being said, the houses here are very, very good, or very cool looking. They have nice views. So not only does the house look cool because of the motif, but they all have very nice views. They're very elevated, and it's the one settlement that kind of goes into a mountain, which is pretty cool. That is definitely a plus. So beauty, this definitely gets it gets an S by itself. Utility, it kind of gets an A-B. Location, it kind of gets an A-B. So I think we average this out, and as much as this might irritate some people, I can't give it an S because I almost have no reason to spend time there, other than it just looking really neat. But it does look really neat, so I will give it an A. After Ebonscale Reach, we have Brightwood. Brightwood's tough to call because I think it's not fun. It's not a fun place to be in. I really don't. I don't think it's that great. I think it's something that is a little bit rough around on the eyes, but I do think again it's a very central location, and there's a reason that you'll see a lot of people wanting to buy here. I think it has one of the best locations for people who are getting up there in level. The only downside, one of the downsides is that it is so close to Everfall. It is extremely close to Everfall. So buying a house in Everfall, because I really feel like not buying a house in Everfall or Windward, if you really want to go that way, is tough. It's a hard decision to make based on the fact that almost nobody's going to be like, and this is based on experience, so this might be anecdotal, but I don't think the trading post is very poppin' in Brightwood. I think there's a lot of cool things to get in Brightwood. There's a lot of actual like trees to chop down in Brightwood. There's a lot of metal to chop down in Brightwood. There's a lot of utility to Brightwood for sure. The biggest downfall is the trading post. And the fact that it's not very pretty. So if we were going from all three categories, utility, it's okay. I think it's like a B plus. If we talk about location, I honestly give it like an A plus. I think it's a very good location. But the utility and location combined for the trading post. So basically, if maybe you're not trading much, or maybe you don't mind spending a little bit of Azoth to get down to one of this more central locations and sell stuff there. So maybe you just want to buy and have that central location, especially because you can go right up into the top zones as well very easily. Although, you know, again, you can walk there, you can travel there, you can do whatever. But having that very central location to get in any of the locations, the location gets like an S. I think the location for Brightwood is extremely high, and I think it's extremely important. So buying a house here is cool. It's just a little grim. The beauty is I would say, if we're talking about dark areas, we've already talked about Reekwater. I think Reekwater is cooler to look at than Brightwood. Brightwood is foggy, but like not in the morning in the forest kind of way. It's foggy and like just everything's so dark and grim. Now that's on purpose, because if you do a lot of the side stories, there's a lot of death and a lot of despair, so there's a lot of loss going on there. But there's also some angry earth. There's those spirits are dangerous, and then there's a lot of corruption there too. It's a very cool place to quest in, story-wise, but we're not like that. It's not talking about like traveling through it and stuff like that. So buying a house here is tough. I can't quite get around to the fact that it is not very special looking. It does look down. It's down bad. It kind of looks pretty messed up, honestly. But it also looks like progress, and I think it's visually showing progress, because like the church here in Brightwood is like being rebuilt. It's like Notre Dame. I think it's pretty cool in a few different ways, but I don't think it's something that I would put very high up there. I think I have to give Brightwood a B. Weaver's Fen, another place that is dark, dusky, and just kind of grim. But Weaver's Fen is very Dark Souls-like. I think it's very cool. I love the swamp look. I hate probably physically actually being in a swamp, but I loved questing here. I love doing a bunch of stuff. There's alligators. There's oil for days, which is huge for utility. There's so much oil. In fact, like in the preview, way before the game came out, is the only place to get oil. And that brought like some really interesting memories. I think it's just a really cool place to be. Unlike Brightwood, it's kind of grim on purpose, and there's definitely a purpose to it. Kind of like Reekwater. Reekwater is very pirate-like, though, and seems like very much overrun by people. Whereas Weaver's Fen is very much like this naturally. It feels very natural to be here. Plus, I think going through the villages and doing some of those quests are pretty cool. I think I have to give Weaver's Fen also a B. Restless Shore. Restless Shore is also interesting. It's often very foggy because it's very much like the settlement is a dock. If you're into pirate themed stuff, like very much like seafaring or pirates or whatever, just that sort of just seafaring type, which is a lot of what New World is, as that's kind of the theme of the game. As anybody that was seafaring found this island, but Restless Shore is very much that motif. It's like that theme. There's obviously a big broken ship in the middle. It's a giant dock. It's interesting. I not a huge fan, but I like the verticality of it. So we have Ebonscale Reach, where the settlement kind of goes into the mountain and rises up. Restless Shore kind of just goes up around itself, which is pretty cool. I haven't really done much crafting here. Not because I find it hard to do crafting here, but every time I'm here, I'm either going to do like depths, which is up the road there, or I'm doing some PvP quests, or I'm doing, all kinds of things, but it's almost never crafting. So utility-wise, it gets a pretty low grade. I think the utility for this settlement is pretty low. Restless Shore gives almost no value to me as far as doing things there. As far as location, it's pretty decent. I mean, it's still right in the center, and but it's over to the east, which makes it a little bit tough. Beauty, as much as it's not my style and something I'm into, I think it is a pretty cool looking territory. It's a pretty cool looking spot. Most of the territory itself is underwater, or at least like has a layer of water on it. Everything's kind of its own little island. There's Bunny Island, there's the little mountain you can go up into. There's some cool locations around the territory, but I think for the most part, in the settlement itself, there are some issues, and some issues that I just don't really enjoy. The fog is cool. I think the fog is cool. I think the ship in the middle is cool. I think a lot of it gives a lot of really cool aspects to it, but for the most part, it's not really my jam. And even with all that being said, I don't think there's anything special. I kind of feel like it almost fits on the Monarch's Bluffs section, but I think I think it's kind of as good as First Light. It's kind of the same thing. It gives me the same sort of things going on. So I give it a C. So finally, Mourningdale. So as we sort of began this, very close to the beginning, we talked about Cutlass Keys. Cutlass Keys being very much everything I love about a settlement. Very Nottingham-like, very much if I'm going to be a Robin Hood-looking dude, I'm going to probably stay in something like Cutlass Keys. With that being said, Mourningdale does kind of everything Cutlass Keys does, but better. And it has its own kind of dark motif to it sometimes too. The motif only happens at night. Obviously, I mean, if it's dark, or if it's nighttime, it's obviously going to be dark. But I don't mean that. I mean, when it gets dark, it gets really misty, and it gets very very eerie, but like in a cool way, especially because it's a lot of flatland with some pretty tall mountains around it. So it's like it's a big valley, which is pretty cool. It's probably very hot there, I would assume. But there's a lot of rivers running through the settlement, or there's a river running through the settlement. There's a lot of rivers running through the territory, and it's got some like ancient remnants of some cool stuff. I think it's very ancient themed, which is probably my favorite of the enemies. Not fighting them because they're kind of annoying, but like how they work and kind of how they look and stuff like that. I think it's pretty cool. The ancients are kind of Egyptian themed, which is interesting. But really the only thing that's ancient sort of looking in the territory is the statues. But I think those statues actually bring a lot to life. It's not quite like a major town like a bunch of people lived in it like Windward. And it's not quite as like low key as Cutlass. In fact, it's kind of high key. It's got a lot going on there. But I think it's a very cool town to live in. With that being said, the utility for Mourningdale is through the roof. Mourningdale has everything. Everything you can ever ask for. It has all the way up to orichalcum. It's got star metal. It's got iron. It's got hemp. It's got tons of animals to go and hunt. It has a giant mountain, like I said, to the northeast, where you can do some very high-level elite quests and stuff like that for your town and for your faction. So that's very cool. I think I've spent a lot of time in Mourningdale, and it has been probably some of the best times. It has very easy access, especially with some of the northwestern kind of quick travel spot. I think it's very cool there. So you could travel there, and then if you need to a little bit, like you do a couple quests there, and then you need to a little bit later, you can go into the next zone over, one of the later zones. So I think Mourningdale has everything. I think legitimately it has everything. So much so that even if the trading post is not super poppin', people spend enough time doing stuff there that they actually, I've seen some things sell pretty well there. And I've been able to buy certain things that I need there too. So the trading post and utility wise is still pretty good. Even if it's not quite Everfall or Windward status. But you can do so much there. I find myself fast traveling there all the time. It doesn't get a whole lot of love on our server as far as like tables go and crafting tables, but it has gotten some. It's gotten more than most, I would say. Obviously, it's not number one, but it's up there, and I think they take a pretty good job of it. The houses there are not super special, which is the only problem with this, as this is a house tier list. The houses there are not super special, but the location, everything you get for it's a pretty high bang for buck. Not to mention getting your standing up, I think, is pretty easy here. So with that, I have to give Mourningdale, it's got an S for me. Mourningdale is great. It's got everything. So that is our New World Houses tier list. Thank you so much for getting us to our sub goal so that we can be able to do that. It looks like we're doing very well in our like goals here on YouTube. I haven't put up any like goals for New World because things have been so crazy lately. But as we start doing more just kind of casual videos, as we start doing more advanced things and talking about what you wish you should be doing in smaller venues and whatnot, and just kind of watching the content kind of flow in through the next few months. It's going to be very interesting. We'll have some other goals going on there. So if you enjoyed this tier list, please, again, leave it a like. If you enjoy any part of this video, subscribe to the channel so you can see more. I will be doing another tier list soon, and I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I had a lot of fun. Houses are really cool, and I think houses are very long-term if you want to keep playing the game for a long time. So with that being said, thank you all so much for watching. I've been Danotage, and we'll see you in the next one.